I cannot but help but notice that there is a huge gaping chasm between what people think things cost here in the United Kingdom and what the reality actually is. So let's have a look at some of the facts that the government and employers don't want you to know. Salaries in London may look very appealing, but living costs can be double or more that in other places. The UK's highest towns and cities are generally in the south east with regard to salary, but remember that is a general pattern. There are exceptions. These are the areas which have the highest paying occupations in greater number. But there are some exceptions to the ones shown on the current slide. There are some places which really come as a surprise, notably Southend, which are close to London but have some of the worst salaries in the country. And this tempts a lot of people to commute from Southend into London, but remember, as we shall see, commuting costs are extortionate too. It's a no-win situation, really. So let's take a look at just how much things really do cost in the United Kingdom so that you can make an informed judgment before you come to work here. Don't just judge on the salary alone. Rents in London are by far the most extortionate. There are huge variations between cities, as you can see, and especially within cities, London in particular really stands out there. So be careful about where you're going to live if you plan to take a job in London in particular. You will be astonished at just how brutal housing costs can be. So rents vary considerably, even average between cities, but this can be misleading. There are huge variations within cities, especially London. One location can have rents which are several times higher than another not far away in London. Of course, with rents come another thing which, of course, people don't think of when factoring in their costs, like the cost of commuting. COVID-19 revealed just how much people were really spending on commuting to work for the first time, and many people want to continue working from home and not return to the office. National insurance here, on top of rent and as well as your income tax, are not the only taxes. There is another one, and this is set at local level. So even after you've got your housing and income tax covered, and fuel costs as well, we pay some of the most extortionate amounts of tax on petrol and diesel in the world. I recommend using a car club to share a car with others and drastically cut the costs if you need a car are going to be a very good idea. But let's factor in something else at local level which you might want to think of too. Council tax. Now, this is a tax set locally by the authorities in your local area, and unfortunately it is what I call a proportionate tax. It bears no relation whatsoever to the amount you are actually earning. Council tax comes in 8 bands, rated according to the supposed value of the place you live in, whether you own it or whether you are just renting. No, you haven't misheard. It was put together in response to the fiasco, which was the poll tax, a disastrous policy of Margaret Thatcher's government in the 1980s, and council tax was put together as a replacement in a hurry without really thinking it through. Note also that her government's responsible for selling off much of the local authority subsidised housing, which is why we have such a horrendous housing crisis in this country too. The problem is not only finding somewhere to live, it is also finding somewhere affordable live, which is an even worse problem. It's been known about for years and no action is taken. Now, wherever you are from in the world, you won't have forgotten your energy bills. If you have to heat your home to get warm in a cold climate, as you do, you will notice how bills have soared recently, and much of our housing is poorly insulated, making us more vulnerable to these increased prices than most European countries. And as you can see, bills have jumped by a huge amount at the start of this financial year, and it's projected to go up even more from £1,300 as a cap last financial year to about 2,000 this time, and projections suggest it could go up to between £2,600 a year, to as much as, or maybe even as much as 3,000. So remember, it's going to cost you a fortune to keep warm in winter. Grocery prices have also been rising too. So, should you come to the United Kingdom to work or study? Well, I leave that up to you now you're in possession of the facts. We do have quite a lot of good things about this country. We've got a fine tradition of allowing foreign students to study in our universities, and some of the careers on offer are good too. But do think about how much everything is going to cost you after you arrive before you take the plunge in at the deep end. Always give it some thought. As a final note, I can't very well give you a huge amount of detail and a video lasting just a few minutes, so by all means check out the National Statistics Office website at www.ons.gov.uk.